Once upon a midnight dreary, while I ponder, weak and weary, over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nod, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping my chamber door. Only this and nothing more. Ah, distinctively I remember. It was in a bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow. Vainly I had sought to borrow from my books surcease of the sorrow, to sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the rare and radiant maiden whom the angels named Lenore, nameless here forevermore. And that's how I feel tonight. Welcome everybody to Tales from the Garrison House. We are here at the historic and some paranormal activity haunted Dustin Garrison House here in Haverhill, Massachusetts. And we do have some public here tonight. And I want to thank Aaron from One Broadway Collaborative for that little intro to make it a little bit more spooky here tonight. Al Cap for filming. It's going to be a fun night. And with the rain out tonight, it makes it even better. The rain hitting the roof, the rain coming in. It's just one of those nights. It's going to be a long, interesting night. Let's start off with the soul. The soul is what makes all of us. The soul is the inside of us. Ever wonder how much that soul weighed? I did. I often wondered. So didn't my good friend Dr. Duncan McDougall. He always wanted to know. He was a Scottish-born man, trained physician in Boston, and he donated his life and time to finding out about tuberculosis, which was a deadly disease. In the early 1900s. He died in 1920. He died of tuberculosis. But what he did has lived on forever. He figured out the soul might weigh 21 grams. And he did that by helping poor families bury their own who had tuberculosis. He would purchase the body from the funeral home and the family and give them a proper burial that they could not afford, as long as he had time to have the body at the end of their lives. What an interesting guy. He later died from tuberculosis. But the history and his legacy lives on in all the cemeteries in New England, especially the one down the street. Hilldale Cemetery, which is also haunted with many ghosts and spirits in there. His spirit lives on. One of his patients is buried there. All over this great Merrimack River Valley, he's got patients buried. Good old Duncan McDougall. Another old friend of mine that has gone on and is looking at those daisy roots where I came from. I came out of the crypt tonight to have this discussion so we can learn more about the laws of New England. Charles W. Tryout Smith, 1852 to 1948. He was a publisher, amateur press publication called The Tryout. Published in 1914, Smith produced 255 monthly issues before his ill forced the end of publication in '46. The tryout was the incubator that gave amateur writers a form to write for. None took that more seriously with some of his notables than the legendary Howard Philip Lovecraft. He spent time here in Haverhill. Charles W. Tryout Smith lived at the bottom of Groveland Street. The house that he lived in burnt in the 90s. They've rebuilt a new house on the site. He is buried at Haunted Hilldale Cemetery, and his spirit does roam. Lovecraft is now more famous. I felt bad for the guy. He worked real hard writing, and he had to write a lot more than we would write today, because they got paid by the word back then. So he ran up the hill, which is like 5 words. He would have to put that in 10 or 15 words so he could get a paycheck. So his readings are quite long. We read some of them as we go on tonight. Not all of it though, because they are long. Some of the stuff that was in Tryout Lovecraft short stories were established, but most notably The Cats of Ulthra, November 1920, The Terrible Old Man, July 1921, The Tree, October 21, and The Vault, November 1925. And then he did The Vanished Spider. 1921, Sir Thomas Tryout was a memoriam to Smith's cat. And Lovecraft also wrote about the haunted Pentucket graveyard here in Haverhill. Also buried there is Judge Saltonstall. For all you who don't know who the great judge is, who is he? He was the gentleman that overseen the Salem witch hysteria as we head into October, where a lot of witches were convicted. He later felt bad for what he did and walked away. But he's not buried in Salem. He's buried at the Pentucket graveyard. So Lovecraft loved old graveyards. Professor Nathaniel Wingate Peaslee of the Miskatonic University was teaching political economy when he suddenly fainted and suffered amnesia for 5 years, Lovecraft wrote. The Shadow of Time, first published June 36 in Astounding Stories. Prior to the writing of the story, he visited Haverhill's early burial ground and saw the settler Nathaniel Peaslee. He also accrued marker for Sergeant John Keyser in Pentucket. John Keyser was killed in the 1696-97 attack on Haverhill. And that was the same year that they took Hannah Dustin captive, who lived down the street, and her husband built this Garrison. They were very dear friends of mine from the past. Anyway, and then she escaped down the river. On this Groveland Street, Pentucket burial ground. Okay. There's more on Pentucket burial ground here. The Changeling and the Ghost, The New Wife and the Old. His first book was not poetry, but a study of local superstitions, the legends of New England, published in 1831. He later went back to Amesbury to Union Cemetery. This is all about Whittier, actually. Union Cemetery, Pine Street in Danvers, Pentucket burial ground in Lynn. The West Lynn burial ground. That must be spooky at night. Anyone know where that is? Never been there?
I don't think so.
Oh, I'd love to find the West Lynn burial ground. another big thing is Havel's County Bridge Road. The county bridge goes over East Meadow. I remember walking that as a kid. And boy, did that bridge scare me. It was wood back then. I was there recently. I don't know what happened to it. But it was a wooden bridge over the East Meadow River near my good friend John Greenleaf Whittier's home. It's always been told to me that local legends that Native Americans were trapped beneath the water under the bridge after they tried to hide after attacking Havel. And beneath the water's edge, after reporting sightings of the headless ghost, a youthful good friend of mine, John Greenleaf Whittier, and some local boys dared each other to cross the bridge at night, calling the ghost. The terror gripped the future poet was permanent. The haunted county bridge is now immortalized in the county bridge ghost, but also message passing a number of poems that Whittier wrote. And let me tell you, that's a scary bridge. Walking over that bridge, thinking you're being watched everywhere you go when you walk down that road. The people won't know where that is. It's located off East Broadway behind the Jewish cemetery and right next to a pond that Whittier wrote about too, called Suicide Pond, in his writings. So you have a lot of very interesting things going on in that area. In fact, later on, as I got older, started walking out there recently again. It's been over 100 years since I've been there. And when we walked out there, some of the members of Essex County joined us. We tried to do a live show from there, and we even with everything going perfectly, nothing went perfect. And then it was like spiders over our heads. We were on saying live, and when we went live, the tablet was, when we went back to play it, it never played. So we lost most of that live show. That was as recent as that new epidemic that just hit us recently called COVID. We were doing live shows 2-3 times a week, 4 times a week, just to keep people and keep my sanity, because sitting around was not me. Laying in that crypt waiting to see what was going to happen next didn't work out well for me. I had to be out there. So, Havel, West Calvary Farm Road. After an evening commute, Peter Riley finds his next-door neighbors butchered on their lawn. After calling 911, he collapsed and wakes in the arms of an EMT. The next night, the neighbors across the street are similarly slaughtered. Now the neighborhood has potential for continual police and news presence. When Peter witnessed the police around his house the house was being butchered by beasts with glowing silver eyes, he realized he might not be alone in his dislike for neighbors in the evening commute. This was actually a story written by Havel native Scott Godswald. It appeared in the anthology Year 2 of The Inner Demon, out in 2013. Havel is also the birthplace of Walter Gilman, a student of the Masonic University, which is double major in non-Euclidean calculus and quantum physics. When he discovered a witch in Arkham, colonial history, whose explanation her spectral travels sound like a rough equivalent of his own theories, he moves into the old room in H.P. Lovecraft, The Dreams in the Witch House. The story was published first by Weird Tales in July 1933. Havel's Nick was the biggest name in horror since Stephen King, and he wrote a lot of big horror too. So a lot of things going on out there, especially here in Haunted Havel. Oh, you got something you want me to read? Okay. Oh, Nathaniel Hawthorne. Oh, Nathaniel Hawthorne. A little quick thing about Nathaniel Hawthorne. My good friend Nathaniel Hawthorne, he wrote a lot of good stuff. He also wrote things about some of my friends. My good friend who lived near this house, and hereafter her captivity, Hannah Dustin, along with another good friend of mine, Cotton Mather. They both wrote the stories of Hannah Dustin. So they both paid tribute to our great lady. My low and humble home. That's what we got here, a low and humble home. It's nice living in this with this big fireplace and all these nice people. Okay. She's going to show me how to do this because this isn't my cup of tea. We're doing something a little different. We're using technology.
Well, aren't you from the 1800s or something?
Oh, I go back further than that. I go back over 1,000 years. Over 1,000 years my body has come and gone. And thousands of people I've seen. And their energies flow through me. We're going to start with Go to the Grave. Ooh. Go to the grave where friends are laid, and learn how quickly mortals fade. Learn how the fairest flower must droop. Learn how the strongest form must stoop. Learn that we are but dust and clay, the short-lived creatures of a day. Yet do not sigh. There is a clime. Where will this dwell through endless time? Who here on earth their Maker serve, and never from the precepts swerve? The grave to them is but a road that leads to that blessed abode. Ooh. That grave. Now we'll talk about my low and humble home. Okay, I just wanted to make sure we had, and that's another Hawthorne. I left my low and humble home, far from my father's fields to roam. My peaceful cot, not more hard charms. My only joy was war's alarms. I panted for the field of fight. I gazed upon the deathless light, which o'er a hero's grave is shed, the glorious memory of the dead. Ambition showed a distant star that shed its radiance bright and far, and pointed to a path which led o'er heaps of dying and of dead. Onward I pressed with eager feet, and war's dreaded thunder still would greet my reckless ears. Where I trod, I saw a green and verdant sod turn with blood and slaughtered foes, and fury veiled in smoke arose. I gained and envied height, and there I sighed that lone cottage where early hours of life flew by on wings of youthful ecstasy. Too late I found that glory's ray could never bring one happy day. That's quite the line. I mean, he spent a lot of time writing. I never picked up the writing fee. I just knew all these great people. I'm going to go back to Whittier real quick, and then we're going to go take a swim in the ocean. Whittier, probably foremost, everybody knows him as a poet abolitionist. I know John as more of a folklorist and early paranormal investigator. He wrote about the haunted bridge, the two-headed snake of Newbury, which we're going to get to right now. He also wrote about the Gloucester Lights. You ever heard of the Gloucester Lights? Overlooking Gloucester Harbor? About a ship that sank way back in the 1800s. He wrote about the Gloucester Lights. I've actually seen those Gloucester Lights from a friend of mine's house who used to live in Gloucester Harbor, staying there overnight. You see the Gloucester Lights. So he wrote about that too, which was real interesting. Yeah, get the old burial ground here, but that's it. Okay. He also wrote a lot of great stories Whittier did about Snowbound, New England, love. I'm going to read one of them here as soon as we pull it out of here. I want to read a portion called In School Days. It's a big poem, but we're going to keep it short. So in school days, if you go out to Haverhill, you'll see the schoolhouse where he talks about this girl that he was in love with at the time. They actually got the stone of her with the schoolhouse on a brand new. They did it historically accurate. It looks really nice with the poem attached to the gravestone of Lydia Eyre. All right. Still sits in the schoolhouse by the road, a ragged beggar sleeping. Around is still the sumacs grow, and blackberry vines are creeping. Within the master's deck is seen, deep scared by raps official, the warping floor, the battered seats, the jackknife carved initials, the charcoal frescoes on the wall. The door is worn but still betraying the feet that creeping slow to school went storming out to playing. Long years ago a winter sun shone over it at setting, lit up the western window panes, the low eaves, the ice fretting. It touched tangled golden curls and brown eyes of grieving, and one who still her steps delayed with all the schools were leaving. For near her stood a little boy, her childish favor single, his cap pulled low upon a face where pride and shame were mingled, pushing with the restless feet the snow. To right and left he lingered, as restlessly her tiny hands. The blue checkered apron fingered. He saw her lift her eyes. He felt the soft hand, light caressing, and heard the tremble of her voice as its fault confessing. I'm sorry I spelt the word. I hate to go above you, because the brown eyes lower fell, because you see I love you. Still memory to a gray-haired man, that sweet child face is showing. Dear girl, the grasses on her grave have 40 years been growing. He lives to learn in life's hard school how few who pass above him lament their triumph and loss, like her, because they love him. Another great story, poem written by John Greenleaf Whittier. What do we got going on here? All right, so we had a lot going on tonight. The weather's creepy, spooky. I can almost feel that there's something around here. Something spooky and creepy. All right, so another house that's from this area, it's actually pretty far away, is the Ocean-born Mary house. That house in Henniker, New Hampshire, has long been known for paranormal activity. Ocean-born Mary lived there, and she went to escape up that way, and she was later killed by a pirate, and her spirit roams the house. Anywhere you go along the coast, you will see spirits roaming the coast. The ocean. The ocean has silent caves, deep, quiet, and alone. Though there be a fury on the waves, beneath them there is none. The awful spirits of the deep hold their communion there. And there are those whom we reap, the young, the bright, the fair. Calmly the wearied seamen rest beneath their own blue sea. The ocean solitudes are blessed, for there is purity. The earth has guilt, and the earth has care. Unquiet are its graves, but peaceful sleep is ever there, beneath the dark blue waves. All right. Also beneath those dark blue waves, we learned long ago. Oh, that's the yellow book, okay. We learned long ago in those dark blue waves that ocean is vast. We learned through some of Whittier's poems and early settlers and pre-settlers that there were creatures in the deep blue. If you grew up on the Cape Ann area, Gloucester, Rockport, you've probably heard the stories of the legendary Rockport sea monster, the Gloucester sea serpent. Those stories are of great interest. All up and down the coast in the 1890s, early 1900s, and actually there were some sightings recently of the Gloucester sea serpent back into the 1990s. But early on, some of my friends would say while they were out there shipping that there was something astray in the ocean floors. And we had to be careful out there because you didn't know what was going to happen. And our friends, the Native Americans, all thought that those serpents could not be hurt. Because if they were hurt, they were afraid they would come back for you. And we even have those sea serpents in lakes up here in New Hampshire. And the Ossipee lake monster, for example, was seen around the same time, the 1890s to the early 1900s, on Little Ossipee Lake, located in the Ossipee Triangle, which has sightings dating back to Native American times of UFOs, Bigfoot, and other creatures. Whittier wrote about these all up and down the history of Ossipee, New Hampshire. So there's a lot of great things going on in the Ossipee area and beyond. We're here in Haverhill, and my good friend John Greenleaf Whittier wrote a great poem about this great city that I have called home since ever I can remember. I know Havel was settled in 1641, 42, but my memory of Havel goes further back. My memory of Havel goes much further back. Read the celebration of the 250th anniversary of the city. Oh, river winding to the sea, we call to the old time back of thee. From the forest paths and the waterways, the century woven, the veil we raise. The voices of the day are dumb. Unheard its sounds that go and come. We listen through long, lasting years to footsteps of the pioneers. Gone steepled town and cultured plain, the wilderness returns again. The deer, untrodden solitude, the gloom and mystery of the wood. Once more, the bear and the panther prowl. The wolf repeats its hungry howl, and peering through his leafy screen, the Indian's copper face is seen. We see their rude-built huts beside grave of men and women, anxious-eyed and wistful youth, remembering still dear homes in England's Haverhill. We summons forth the mortal view, the dark of Pasco and Sagahew, the wild chiefs who own the mighty sway of wizard Passaconaway. Weird memories of the border town, by old traditions handed down, like chants and chants before us pass, like pictures in a magic glass. The terror of midnight raid, the death concealing this ambuscade, the winter march through the deserts wild, of captive mother, wife, and child. Ah, bleeding hands alone subdued and tamed the savage habitude of forest hiding beasts of prey and human shapes as fierce as they. Slow from the plow the woods withdrew. Slowly each year the cornlands grew. Nor fire, nor frost, nor foe could kill the Saxon energy of will. And never in hamlet bound was lack of sturdy manhood found. And never failed the kindred good, O brave and helpful womanhood. The hamlet now a city is. Its long-built huts are places. The wooden path of settlers cow in traffic's crowded highway now. And far wide the stretches still along its southward sloping hill, and overlooks on either hand the rich and many watered land, and gladdening all the landscapes fair, as Pison was to Eden's pair, our river to the valley brings the blessing of the mountain springs. And nature holds its narrowing space for Mott the crowd her old-time grace, and the gods with fondly jealous arms, the wild growths of outlining farms. Her sunsets on Canosa fall, her autumn leaves by Saltonstall. No lavish gold can richer make her opulence a hill and lake. Wise was the choice which led our sirens to kindle their homeland fires and share a large content of all whose lines in pleasant places fall. More dear as years on years advance, where prize the old inheritance, and feel as far and wide we roam, that we all weak we leave at home. Our palms, our pines, our oranges, our apples on the orchard's trees. Our thrushes are our nightlingless, our larks, our blackbirds, our veils. No incense from which the Orient burns is sweeter than our hillside ferns, with topic splendor can outvie. Our autumn woods, our sunset sky, is where their slow years came and went, and left no affluence by content. Now the flashes are dazzled the eyes. The electric light enterprises, and the old idyllic ease seems lost its keen activities, and crowded workshops now replace the hearts and farm fields' rustic grace. And it goes on from there. But that's long enough on that one. We actually today have been blessed to have people join me as I arrived out of the crypt tonight. Did the people who joined us tonight have any questions before we continue?
Any questions, guys?
All right, we will continue. Just wanted to make sure, so we'll continue with this great poem. It's almost done, on the great city of Haverhill. And the old idyllic ease seems lost, the keen activities and crowded workshops now replace the heart's farm's field rustic grace. No dull mechanic round of toil, life's morning charm can quite despoil, and youth and beauty, hand in hand, will always find enchanted lands. No tasks ill we had were hand and brain, and skill and strength have equal gain, and each shall each in honor hold, and simple manhood outweigh gold. Earth shall be near to heaven when all that severs man from man shall fall, for here and there salvation's plan alone is love of God and man. O dwellers by the Merrimack, and Merrimack is spelled with a C, the heirs of centuries at your back, still reaping where you have not sown. A broader field is now your own. How fast the Puritan heritage. But let the free thought of age its light and hope and sweetness add to the stern faith the fathers had. Adrift on time's returnless tide, and waves, the follow waves we glide. God grant we leave upon the shore, so the waif of good is lacked before. Some seed the flower or plant of worth, some add beauty to the earth, some larger hope, some sought to make the sad world happier for its sake, as tenants of the uncertain stay. So may we live our little day, that only grateful hearts shall fill the homes we leave in Haverhill. The singer of a farewell rhyme, upon whose utmost verge of time the shades, the night are falling down. I pray, God bless the good old town. Wow, very powerful there. My friend John did a great job writing that poetry. As you can see, it's getting darker. It's getting dreary. The bugs are coming to get me now. It's almost time for me to head home. Home. That's a funny word. What is home? Home to some people are a house. Home to some people are an igloo. Home to others are a colonial house like this. While to others, home is where the heart is. And to others, home is at the local graveyard. But to many, home is definitely where the heart is. All right. A couple more, and we're gonna call it, my energies are getting lower. The animals are coming for me. I can already hear myself falling downward and out. I am going to talk about my friend Colonel John Buck, how we're going to probably end this tonight. Colonel John Buck was born in Haverhill in 1718, and he died March 1795. He was a nice man, he was a businessman, but the people of Haverhill did not like him. He wanted to put the mill at the bottom of Millbrook, which was the original downtown, not the downtown of Haverhill you see today. The downtown I grew up in would have been on Millbrook near the Linwood Cemetery. He was thrown out of town, and you probably know where he moved to. Anybody want to take a guess? Only your voice will be heard. No guesses?
Lawrence?
No. Has anybody ever been to Maine?
Yes,
Ever hear the great town of Bucksport, Maine?
I think so.
If you go up to Bucksport, Maine, you'll see my friend Jonathan Buck buried there. While he was there, though, he had a witch convicted of witchcraft. She died. And after he died, this female leg showed up on his gravestone. They've never been able to get rid of it since. It's still there today if you want to go check it out. In fact, you could even find the picture online. Bucksport isn't a big community. The sign to the cemetery where Jonathan Buck is buried, it's only about this big. But the story of Jonathan Buck next to the size of the cemetery is 3 times the size. So if you want to go read about my friend Jonathan Buck, who got the whole town named after him up there, of Bucksport, Maine. So you go check that New England lore out. That is one of the best stories you can know about. I want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight. I want to thank these great people who got in their horse and buggy and came all the way down from the Lynn Swampscott area. And folks, that's about a 2.5 hour ride back tonight. I want to thank you all for tuning in. Of all the people at home, everybody that tuned in online tonight. Just want to thank everybody. I'm now got to head back. My body is shaking. I'm getting weak. It's getting weaker and weaker. It's time for me to head back to my crypt. But I need a little music to walk away. I want to thank my friend Aaron for playing a little music tonight. I want to thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you all for tuning in, and I'm heading back to my crypt. Good night.